Okay, so today's video, guys, is kind of dealing with the adding and subtracting real numbers, also making sure we understand multiplying and dividing with real numbers, so negatives and positives, and then adding the variable aspect, review on distribution property, and then looking at commutative and associative adding and subtracting again. So I went over in class the other day with the signs of how you do each one. So if you have a negative and you're adding those, that's actually, you're going to add, but it's going to be a negative number. If you have a positive number plus a positive number, you're adding and it's going to be positive. If you are adding but you have a positive and a negative, you're actually going to subtract, and the negative and positive is kind of up in the air. Then negative plus a positive, yet again, still subtracting, negative or positive, it depends upon the situation. Then if we go in subtraction mode, so plus minus plus is you're subtracting, or not a plus, positive. Negative minus a negative, you're also subtracting here because you're doing the same change, flip mode, and this now becomes subtracting plus a positive. Okay. Now, if you're have a negative minus a positive, you're actually going to add those numbers, and it's going to end up being a negative. So I did two positives, subtracting two negatives, subtracting a negative and a positive, subtracting a negative and a positive. I think that's it. Now, that is all adding and subtracting with real numbers. So what I want you to do is I'm going to give you 4 examples, and I want you to do these on your own. So pause the video and then start it again. Okay, so in our scenario, this is a positive number, this is a positive number, but I'm subtracting. So this would give me -1. This is the other thing I haven't gone over too much. Because the larger number is second, or if you have, for example, -21 plus 4, this is going to be a negative number because the larger number, it has the negative attached. Now, this whole situation is like me saying 21 minus 4, but I have a negative. So 21 minus 4 gives you 17. So it's -17. Next one, I've got a negative minus a negative. Remember the same change flip method. So it's -4 plus +10. That's going to give me a +6 because the larger number is positive. I have a -5 plus a -6. I'm going to add those together, and that gives me -11. -14 minus 3. This now kind of switches to that negative. I can add those together, and that gives me -17. Okay, now what I'm going to go over is multiplying and dividing with real numbers. So multiplying and dividing, it's basically an odd or even rule. That's what I call it. So if you have, when we're dealing with negatives, positives, if it's 2 times 5, that's always going to be positive. If it's 14 divided by 7, that's always going to be positive as well. So with negative real numbers, I have what I call the odd and even rule. If there are 2 negatives, so -3 times -5, it is going to be positive 15 because there are 2 negatives and 2 is an even number. If there is 1 negative, so -3 times 5, your answer is always going to be odd. Or negative, not odd. But 1 is an odd number. If you go up the line, if you have 3 numbers and all 3 are negative, your answer is going to be negative. And this is going to be -12. If you have 3 numbers if you have 3 numbers and 2 of them are negative, so -10 times 3 times -5, that is going to give you positive 150. Now that's multiplication right here. If I take division, it's the same type of thing. If I have -10 divided by 2, that's going to give me -5. 1 negative, that meets my odd requirement. If I have -10 divided by -2, that's going to give me +5. So when dealing with negative and positives and you're multiplying and dividing, I always think, is there an even number of negatives or is there an odd number of negatives? And that's going to tell me if I'm positive or negative. I'm going to give you 4 questions with multiplication and division. Pause the video, do those, and then check your answers.